Right, what we're doing? What we're doing here? We're doing some old-fashioned Italian risotto. Right, so we've got our ingredients here. We've got our fancy rice. This is Taste the Difference, so hopefully it tastes a bit better than the regular stuff. We've got some dried porcini mushrooms. These are the star of the show, so we have to make sure these are definitely included. We've got some shallots and we've got some garlic. We've got our stock, other brands available. Bit of olive oil in my new favourite kitchen utensil, squeezy bottle. Half a bottle of white wine, bit of the old Parmesan, and plenty of nice crisp petit pois peas. Right, so first step, before we do anything, we've got to prepare our porcini mushrooms. So these are dried, come in these nice handy little bags. Now I'm using 2 bags for 5 people, to serve with 5 people, because big family. Whoa. Really, really strong in smell, but they just give so much deep flavour to the risotto. Honestly, once you try these things, you'll never go back. And the other thing is, what most cooking channels won't tell you, is that when you soak the mushrooms, it leaves this really nice, dark, kind of sort of like mushroomy broth. And that is going to give so much flavour and depth to our risotto. So let's get it all underwater, make sure it's all nicely submerged. These are quite light, so they're going to float at the top. And we're going to want to leave that for a good kind of sort of like 10-15 minutes really. Obviously the longer the better because you get more of the flavour out of the mushrooms, but about 10-15 minutes now. Right, okay, shallots. Sort of like onions really, but a bit more delicate in flavour. And hopefully should really sort of like not over dominate the flavour of the risotto. You want it nice, fine pieces. Again, watch out for those fingers. Almost lost a finger once. With the shallots, a bit more tricky and a bit more fiddly than regular onions, but I always like to try to go lengthways. Michelin star chefs will do that kind of fancy thing where they just have it all kind of sort of like attached at the end. That stops it from going all over the gaff, but I don't mind. I feel this knife needs a little bit of sharpening actually. Right, look at that beautiful, finely chopped shallots. We've got a couple of cloves of garlic here, probably use 2 of them I reckon. I always prefer fresh over the kind of processed stuff because just to give it more flavour. Give it a good old smash with the side of a knife, and the reason why we do that is because it just helps get rid of that skin super easily. Same thing again with the other one. Yeah, look at that. It's like I've done this before. Next step on our journey of risotto. Need to get the old pan going. Get on the old sort of like medium to low heat. And then we're going to use said olive oil bottle. Give it the old squeeze. And then we're going to just basically take our shallots, lob them in. Doesn't matter if it's warm at this stage. And also we're going to throw the garlic into the mix as well. Now let that come up to heat while we do the next step. Right, so we've been cooking the shallots and the garlic for about sort of like a good 3-4 minutes now, and as you can see it's just starting to golden up a little bit. So that means we can move on to the next step, which is to prepare the rice. Normally I've gone for 300 grams with this before, for 5 people. Just turns out not to be enough. So we're going to go bold and we're going to go with 400 grams. I've opened the box, but the little piddly hole is it's pretty rubbish. So 400 grams going in. Right, rice into the pot. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little bit of a stir just for a few minutes, just to sort of like soak up some of that oil, get them nicely kind of sort of like close to the onions and the garlic. Probably just for sort of like 2 or 3 minutes, just on the low heat. And that just gives us enough time to start preparing the stock. Right, before we introduce our stock into the fray, we've got our beautiful white wine. A bit of Pinot Grigio, looks like it's from Lake Garda maybe. Good with salads and fish. Neither of the things that are going into our risotto. Nonetheless, in she goes. Whole thing going in. Don't worry about doing it in parts. And get that heat right up. And the key here, and this is where the first smells really start to hit the old nostrils. You want to bring that up to a nice high temperature, and you want all that rice to soak up all the fluid before we do absolutely anything. The thing about risotto is all about patience, taking your time, getting it right, doing your steps by step, and you can't take shortcuts, otherwise you start to impact the quality of your product. Right, next up we're going to start preparing our stock. Now, I've gone for chicken stock. You can do vegetable stock, but I prefer chicken. She gives it a little bit more of a richer flavour, I think. It's a bit darker in colour as well. Now, this is enough stock to make 900 millilitres, but I need a bit more for 400 grams. But I've got all that delicious water from the mushrooms, which is going to add a bit of bonus flavour. I'm going to take this up to 900, 950, maybe something like that. Right there. And then we'll just give it a little bit of a whiz around with our ladle. Now you can use a whisk, but the reason I'm using a ladle is to try and save washing up later on. That'll take a few minutes to do its thing. In the meantime, let's go and check on the rice. Now look at that. Already that fluid has all disappeared super quick. And full disclosure, both me and Gemma are not drinking at the moment. Have been drinking for 6 months. We miss it dreadfully. And even just pouring the wine into food is enough to just get my blood boiling. Look at that though. Right, what we're going to do next, we've got our stock over here, is we're going to do this one ladle at a time. You're thinking, what? Just chuck it in. No, we're just going to do this one ladle at a time, and we're not going to add the second ladle, or the third ladle, or the fourth ladle, until all that fluid is gone, has been picked up by the risotto rice. Right, okay, time to bring mushrooms into play. So we're going to want to separate the mushrooms away from the fluid, but in order to do that, I'm just going to have to scoop it in. So now I like to use a slotted spoon because it just gets rid of them nice and quick. I'm going to leave the fluid in the bowl. I'm just going to use the back of the slotted spoon just to squeeze any additional moisture out. It's super important to just return that beautiful flavour back into the water if you can. Now be careful, because when you rehydrate these, it does just produce a little bit of grit that goes to the bottom of the bowl. Don't really want that in your risotto. That's going to make a bit of an unpleasant bite. And then we've kind of got rid of all that excess fluid. Bang them back onto the table. I'm going to give them a bit of a coarse chop. Because you don't want to be biting into a big old chunk of these things. You want a nice, kind of sort of like well balanced bite. Peas, parmesan, mushroom. As you can see, a nice, nothing too big, chunky. Unless, of course, you're that way inclined. If you are, by all means, go chunky. I'm going to get these bad boys. I'm going to add them into the risotto. There we go, my gorgeous assistant. There we go. Mushrooms have been added into the risotto, and then we're going to go with the remainder of the stock, and that should then sort of like start to bring this thing together. Now, before we close out this section, I'm just going to see if we can try and capture some of this beautiful mushroom water. Nice dark fluid there. That's going to go straight into our stock. Don't worry if you've got a couple of mushrooms that have sort of like made their way into your stock, it's not a problem. It's all go in the same place eventually. Last couple. As you can see in the bottom of the bowl is just like gritty bits. You don't really want them in your risotto. Alright, we're going to back up on heat. And we're going to go in with another ladle. And you should start to see this risotto go from sort of like a pale white colour to a nice dark rich brown colour. Right, we are literally like a ladle away now from sort of like finishing this off. I had a little taste, still a bit to go, but it's not far off. Now, I think this is usually a good time to throw the peas into the mix. So I'm going to be quite liberal with these because everyone in the family loves peas, including myself. Let's go mad for it. Not too many? Might be too many. Maybe you're right. Ah, shine a light. Look at that. It's like they've disappeared like magic. A few more? Yeah, a few more. Go on then. And don't forget, there's a little bit of water in these peas as well, so that's going to add a little bit of extra moisture to the mix. And the last thing we're going to do before we take this off to rest, I'm going to give it another half a ladle, is we're going to throw a handful of Parmesan cheese in there. And that's going to make it an absolute gooey dream. Now, pre-grated this earlier, doing arm day. Just going to throw it in there. And I'm telling you now, anyone that tells you that pre-grated Parmesan is just as good, they're lying. Nicely stirred in. Look at that. Come on, tell me you are not absolutely salivating right now. I know I am. I'm friggin' starving. Digging holes in the garden all afternoon. The last thing we're going to do before we let it sit is we're going to throw a bit of black pepper into the mix. Now, depends on how much black pepper you like. I like loads. A bit more black pepper the better. Gives it a nice little bit of heat as well when you bite into the little peppercorns. And that is ready to sit. Right. Of course you want to see the finished article in all its glory. And we're going to finish up with a smidgen of rocket and a single garlic breadstick. Bon appetit.